Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Browne. I'm head of commodities at Barchart. Thanks for joining us today for this fourth installment of our 2020 Summer WASDE Preview Series. I'm joined this afternoon by Mike McGinnis, the markets editor for Successful Farming and Agriculture.com at Meredith Corporation. Mike is currently in his 16th year in this position. He leads Successful Farming's efforts in farm business and grain marketing coverage, and covered the agricultural futures markets from the floor of the Board of Trade. Before Successful Farming, Mike served as an award-winning editor of Data Transmission Network and worked in the radio industry for 15 years. Mike is married, has 2 children, and grew up on a livestock farm in Shenandoah, Iowa. Mike, want to say hello?
You bet, Michael. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me.
You bet. Glad to have you. Just a quick preview of the agenda. We're going to, with Mike, take a look at what are some of the new trends in agriculture and what he is seeing and how that might affect the markets. And then we're going to go through kind of a preview of WASDE with an update of Barchart's own commodity yield indexes and forecasts. And then finally, at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So there's a Q&A panel in your dashboard for the webinar. Just feel free to submit questions there, and then Mike and I will address those at the end. With that, I'm going to kick it over to Mike McGinnis. Mike, thanks again for participating in our live stream event today. Before we take a look at our latest yield forecast, what are you seeing as some of the latest macro trends in agriculture? And how do you think that might change the industry?
Well, I think I'll mention 3. 2 of the 3 will probably impact the markets a lot. The first one, though, is just something new that I'm seeing in agriculture. It's a trend, I think, that's happening mainly brought on by the coronavirus pandemic. But that's land and farm equipment sales that are occurring more often online. And this has happened in the past. Obviously, there have been auction houses around for a while, but these auction houses and also these real estate ag businesses are realizing that a lot of people are coming online to make those purchases of farmland and also big farm equipment. And I think this is interesting. It's an interesting trend in agriculture, maybe not necessarily for commodity prices, but just a characteristic of what is going on in agriculture, because when people get comfortable with buying online their farm equipment and their farmland, I mean, you know, what's next? A lot of things could be, you know, purchased online, and that could have a huge impact in the infrastructure of agriculture, I believe, in the future. Now, the threat to the ethanol industry, I think, is something that people need to really pay attention to. I think for the first time since really President George W. Bush came to Iowa and promoted ethanol, that the industry is really facing some challenges here. The thoughts that I had is the ethanol industry is facing a big challenge to I don't know if I want to say stay alive, but you know, we've seen some plants either idle or close. And in fact, at one point, a huge percentage of the ethanol production output was shut down by the ethanol plants in the last 3 months. And so what's happening, obviously farmers are having have fewer places to sell their corn. We're seeing less animals fed, so there's less of a need for DDGs, the dry distillers grains. So the ethanol plants are having to find other markets for their products. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, Michael, but the U.S. Grains Council told me anyway about a month and a half ago or 2 months ago that they're well aware that corn is backing up in this country and ethanol is backing up in this country. And so they're out around the world as we speak, trying to open up new markets. And you know, as you take a look at the corn market, I mean, I've heard that if we lose the ethanol industry, you know, you can shave off $1.50 or maybe more off the corn market, you know, right now. And so it's crucial to keep this ethanol industry for the corn market alone. But I think that we've covered this in Successful Farming. The whole state of ethanol and how we're gonna open up more markets around the world. But I think that is something to watch going forward. And then along those same lines, regaining market share in the global market, and I'm talking not just corn and ethanol, but soybeans and wheat and the other protein products that we produce. For a long time, we were the only corn store in the world. So if we were, if someone was out there in the world looking for corn, they came to us. That's not necessarily the truth anymore. Brazil is producing a lot more corn, not anywhere close to what the US is producing. I understand that. But the fact is there's another option for buyers around the world, and we're seeing some of that market share cut in the corn market. For soybeans, we all know the story. Brazil, South America, Paraguay, Uruguay, South America as a continent can really provide a lot of soybeans for China, but not all of what China needs. So we're thankful for that for the US farmer, because China, as they're doing now, even though they bought record amounts of soybeans from Brazil and Argentina, they still don't have enough. And so they're coming to the US, and recently anyway, buying big amounts of soybeans from the US farmers. So, but for a long time, my point is, we haven't had to worry about other corn stores or other soybean stores, so to speak. But we're in a different world now, and I think it's going to be up to the commodity groups and everybody in the industry to try to reach out there and try to find new markets and grab back some of that market share that we've lost.
Well, very good, Mike. I really appreciate that. Some very good insights. We'll see if we get some questions during the next section here that we can address in the Q&A. But I think it'd be particularly interesting to kind of talk a little bit more when we get to that stage about how the weaker dollar may help impact the grain exports for us, make us more competitive globally. So we'll see what kind of questions we get around that. Okay, very good. I'm going to segue here over to Barchart's commodity yield forecasts and a bit of the WASDE review. So just a kind of a quick update on where was WASDE back in July. We had a corn estimate of 178.5 bushels per acre, and beans at 49.8, so just shy of 50. For our forecasts here at Barchart, as of August 4th, which was our official August release, we were at 174.8 for corn and 48.8 for beans. However, because we update our forecasts daily, we have an update to that last one for you that just came out yesterday. And we're now sitting at corn nationally of 176.5 bushels and beans just shy of 50 bushels per acre. And we'll see how that continues to move, but it might give you some indication of where the WASDE might be positioned tomorrow. And Mike, at the end, I'd like to get your perspective too on where you think WASDE may come out as we go forward here.
Sure.
The Barchart yield forecasts are available not just at those national levels we just looked at, but they're also available state by state for all the major growing regions as well. And you can see, Iowa, for example, as of August 4th, it was just shy of 200. I checked today's numbers, and we're actually a bit over 200 now for Iowa, 202, I think it was. You can also look down like Minnesota, as of the 4th, was up at 193, up 4 bushels from our July estimate. So things are definitely moving around, and worth taking a look at these on a more frequent basis. Over on the bean side, we can see Iowa 56 3/4, just shy of 57 bushels. Some of the other highlights: Nebraska at 62 bushels per acre for beans. Not quite as much fluctuation there as we saw in corn in some of the states, but definitely things moving around there as well.
Hey, it is amazing, Michael, that Nebraska soybean yields have really increased over the years, and they've said for years now that Nebraska farmers they've figured out a way to grow soybeans. I'd like to know what how they're doing it, but
What changed?
that's really a high as far as being in the Corn Belt. That's a high number for soybean yields.
Absolutely, absolutely. I always have to start taking a look at that.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, very good. Just a bit about access to our free yield forecast. So we publish twice a month, the first and third Tuesday of each month, our yield forecasts. You can sign up at the link at the bottom of your page on barchart.com/commodity. And you get both the national forecast and those state forecasts available in your inbox every first and third Tuesday of the month. On Commodity View, so Commodity View Pro includes all of this data, but more. You can get yield forecasts down to the county level, and you also get daily updates. So using our methodology, which includes NVDI, NVWI, a number of other factors that we put into it, you can get daily updates in our yield forecasts. It's also displayed in several different ways within Commodity View. So, in the report that you get twice a month in your inbox, you get the numbers. In Commodity View, you get the geospatial representation of that. So up on the screen right now, I've got a state-by-state, or actually a state-by-state map. But you can drill down in that and get those yield forecasts at the crop reporting district level and at the county level as well. And then over on the right-hand side, you can see you can get a tabular report in our cash data panel, but you can also chart the history of those yield forecasts. So you can see how and where it's trending. And again, all the way down to the county and up to the national level with those. Oops. Okay, very good. That completes the yield forecast portion of the webinar. Let's go into a bit of Q&A, Mike, if you're all set for that.
Yep.
Okay, well, we're waiting for some to come in from the viewers today. Just a couple of questions, a little bit about you. Folks can get to know you a little bit better. Can you tell us about your background and how you got into this crazy business?
Sure. Well, first off, I was raised, as you mentioned, on a livestock farm in southwest Iowa. My dad, I have 5 brothers and 6 sisters, so we have a big family, but my dad was an insurance salesman. He traveled a lot, so he bought a lot of hogs and cattle, and so that's what he used to keep his sons busy. I think that's why he did it. I'm not sure how much money we ever made, but
You should keep you busy.
yeah. So we ran a lot of sow farrow to finish operation, and like I say, we had some cattle, and that's really the background that I had in agriculture was livestock. I had to learn the row crop business as I went along, but I essentially went to Northwest Missouri State University in Maryville, Missouri, and that's where I received my degrees. And I went into the radio business for 15 years and working in the news and sports and agriculture in the farm departments of all the radio stations that I ever worked at. I always had that interest in agriculture, and there was a time when I jumped from the electronic broadcasting to more of a print journalism, and Successful Farming called and was wanting to upgrade and update their markets department, and so I went to work around 16 years ago now for Successful Farming, and of course we have the oldest agriculture website in the country, agriculture.com. That's how we got the name itself, because we started so early. So yeah, so and I had an opportunity to go to Chicago and report from the floor of the Board of Trade, and that was really, really interesting. I learned a lot. I really captured a lot of friends there, and contacts as far as analysts and traders, and I learned how crazy of a business, futures market can be, especially trading. But it was interesting. I was there during the peak of the market, and also really the trough, so to speak, the lows that we've ever seen in the history, and also the highs.
Nice.
So
2007, 2008,
yeah, yep,
first ethanol spike.
that's right. And I was also there on the floor the day there was a fat fingered, well, it really wasn't a fat fingered trade in the wheat market. It was when it gyrated, so high and low in like 25 seconds or whatever. I think it turned out that there was some illegal activity going on there with a trader, not on the floor, but anyway, it was interesting to see how the whole floor just reacted to, something big that was going on.
Mhm.
And frankly, I enjoyed the USDA, the mornings of the USDA reports on the floor, because you would get almost immediate reaction of what the markets might do in the next when they opened, a half hour later. That was when the USDA reports came out in the morning.
Right.
Or-
Yep. Yep. The lull before the storm.
Yeah, so you'd have a huddle in the corner of the floor of these traders, and they would just immediately give their opinion as to what the numbers meant and what the markets were going to do. And I thought it was fascinating. And
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure that was some great background for what you're doing
yeah,
now. Oh, excellent, excellent. You touched on this earlier with how important exports are becoming, especially with the slowdown in the ethanol world. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on the globalization of the egg markets? How far down does the dollar have to go to make us, the number one go-to source again?
yeah, it's interesting how the world production, continues to grow. There are people in the market that believe that the market is asking for big crops every year. In other words, we use up everything that we produce. And if you look at a chart of, production versus use, I mean, those two lines are coming together. They're coming together. And so it's true that the world needs what we're producing. It's just that uh, we produce a lot, and in the last 5 or 6 years, we've had really good crops, not just here in the U.S., but also in South America and other countries. I mean, the world is sitting on a huge pile of wheat, as you know, Michael, and we can't even get a bearish number in the USDA reports to even move the wheat market higher, and it's been that way for a long time. So we're facing some what many believe oversupply, but yet if we don't produce it, then uh, we're going to be short of what the world demand is, and
Sure.
I think that's what actually would bring the prices higher. It really would.
Okay. Yep.
But we haven't had a serious weather problem in the U.S. and in Brazil at the same time, and since about 2012. And we all know what happened, that year with prices. And that's really what the market needs. Is we need the major producers to have some sort of inclement weather, and we just haven't had that. The U.S.
Clear up some
dollar,
of the dumps.
yeah. You want to talk about the U.S. dollar? It is surprising that we're not exporting more based on that lower dollar. Now, I think what we're up against a little bit as far as soybeans is Brazil. Their farmers are paid in U.S. dollars when they sell their soybeans for export. Well,
Yep.
that's happening big time right now because they're making money hand over fist by exporting soybeans because they're getting paid in a real strong dollar down there versus their real currency. In fact, if you don't mind, we tapped the mind of one of our counterparts down in Brazil the other day, and she sent to me some comments. And if you don't mind, Michael, I'd like to share them now.
Yeah, that'd be excellent. Thank you.
So on exports, she says the soybean exports are likely to reach about 80 million metric tons in 2020. That's compared to 74 in last year. So up, about 6 million metric tons. She says it could be more, but it seems that the supply and demand table cannot stand more than 80 million metric tons. If Brazil exports more than that, it's because their production and or beginning stocks were larger to start with. So exporters are still bidding for shipment in the coming months, and bidding as high as 200, must be $2 over Chicago. So they're making a lot more money than the Chicago market. It's a fierce battle with domestic buyers. So the domestic buyers are trying to buy up more soybeans, not letting them all go out, out of the country. Corn exports, on the other hand, she says, is likely to reach something between 30 and 32 million metric tons. That's compared to 42 last year, so down quite a bit from last year for corn exports. The domestic market is heated and the corn overpriced in comparison with other origins such as Argentina and the US. So that's the picture for exports, soybean exports in Brazil. But what's even more interesting is their farmers selling. So the 2019-2020 soybean crop is sold out. Okay, they've already sold all of that. The 2020-21 soybean crop is half sold.
Wow.
Which is twice as much as a year ago. And this is, again, for those just joining us, we're talking about information coming from Ag Rural Commodities. Daniela Sekira is a real good friend of ours, and we share stories and information. But she provided this information to me just yesterday. And it's amazing that they're selling so far ahead because they're making so much money. The weaker real against the dollar explains why farmers have been selling so fast. Also, demand is pretty strong for delivery in 2021, and Chinese have been active buyers for delivery in the first quarter of 2021 already. So that's really the story. The U.S. dollar is strong for them, and it's weak for us, which should mean more exports. I think that will play out later. I think that the U.S. dollar, as long as it stays low, it's not good for a lot of other things here in this country. That's the truth. But for our commodities, it should help us get more of this crop out the door.
All right, excellent. We do have a few questions coming in from some of the viewers today. But before we do that, if you had to make one prediction, go out on a limb for the ag markets in 2020, what would be your prediction there?
Well, I think the problem the markets are having is they've been trading sideways for so long, and we have a huge crop. You just gave your estimates. We're going to see the estimates come out tomorrow from the USDA for this crop, and it's going to be big. The question is not whether it's going to be big, it's going to be how big the yields will be, how big the production is going to be. I just heard from an analyst yesterday. He's never seen the soybean crop progress condition report so high at this time of the year. And we're running out of time for a lot of problems to happen for this crop. Now, unless you get a Derico, where you flatten the crop like some corn in Iowa. I mean, unless that happens, I mean, we're sitting on such a huge crop. The carry out for not the end of this marketing year, but for the end of the next, I've heard could be 4 billion bushels. The market, Michael, doesn't get nervous unless we drop below 1 billion bushels, and we're going to have 4. I mean, my prediction is that we're going to probably trade sideways, and maybe even lower. I hate to say that, but I mean, you're seeing the outside investors get more bearish, on these commodity of traders, commitment of traders reports on Fridays.
Right. Sure.
And so I think unless we see some big, I mean, we're going to need a lot of interest from around the world to really move these markets if we're not going to have bad weather during crop season.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. Great summary, Mike. And just kind of a bit of a segue there. You mentioned crop condition reports. You mentioned commitment of traders reports. Just want to let everybody know that all of that data is also available in Commodity View as well. So you can, do all of the analysis that Mike is talking about with all of that data within that platform. One of the questions that came in is, do you have a way to overlay the planted acres of those states with the yield forecast? And yes, we do. So again, the planted acres information is in Commodity View, and you can overlay that on the same maps that we saw earlier with the yield forecast. And more to come in each of those areas as well. Are you anticipating any significant corn or soybean acreage changes in tomorrow's WASDE? That's to you, Mike.
The acreage changes, I don't necessarily think so. Now, the thing about tomorrow's report, everybody has to keep in mind, is it's going to be based off of mainly farmer surveys and satellite imagery. All right, so tomorrow's report is not going to be based on actual yield plot surveys. It's going to be on farmer surveys. So we're going to have to probably wait till September to get some really hardcore data. And so that might muddy the waters for tomorrow's numbers, but we'll see. Hopefully the farmers are out there, I don't want to say telling the truth, but offering up some honest, giving their best guesstimate. That's one way to put it. But so we'll see. I'm not sure if that's going to be the focus either. Is the acreage? The focus is going to be the yields and maybe feed use, and how we're using what we have. So.
Sure. Any rebound on the ethanol usage, do you see?
There might be, because we have seen an uptick in driving. I mean, it's not back to where we need it to be, but we have had an uptick in driving. Some areas of the country, did get out over that July 4th time. Probably shouldn't have, some of them, as we have seen an upsurge in coronavirus cases again. But I think that as you watch the weekly ethanol production numbers, we did see an increase in usage. Not great, but maybe it's something that the USDA will take into account.
Okay, excellent. And that's information too that's available in Commodity View. So again, all the kind of the analysis and the thought process that you go through can be supported by our product there. So that's good to hear.
That's right.
Very good. The last question was about, you really answered, will the report be based on surveys or actual ground tours? And you mentioned that it'd be heavily based on farmer surveys at this stage.
Yep, and I think that I've asked the question to other analysts. What would it take for this market or this report to have a real big impact? Because normally it doesn't. But this year, if we drop below, you showed an estimate of 49. If we drop below 50, from what I'm told on soybeans, and anything above 179 or 180 on the corn estimate, that could provide some movement in the market.
At least. Yeah, or at least a floor of support.
Yeah. Yep.
So very good. Okay, that's all the questions that we have time for. Mike, I appreciate you joining us today. It was an excellent discussion.
Thank you.
I appreciate everybody else joining us today for this fourth in our series of WASDE previews. Have a great day. Thanks again, Mike.
Thanks, Michael.